Today's rest day. We're going to the gym. We're gonna do a little bit of stretching. I always make sure to do some myofascial release before I do stretching because it helps get the blood flowing and it warms up the muscle a little bit. So you can also do a little bit of cardio to get your blood flowing. You just go on a walk or get on the treadmill or a bike or something. We're gonna start with some upper body stretching, particularly for the pecs. We need a doorway for this one. You're gonna get your arms up 90 degrees at the elbow, 90 degrees at the arm, and go right into the doorway. You can put your hands up high towards the corner. It'll stretch your pecs a little bit differently. And lastly, put your hands down towards the bottom. Step forward a little bit more, bring those arms behind you. When you're stretching, it's really important to have slow and controlled breaths. It expands your rib cage and allows you to get a deeper stretch without forcing anything. To stretch the trap muscle, you want to take your arm and reach down, press down towards your knee or towards your pocket. You're going to look down at the other side's pocket and gently pull your head down. You should feel a stretch in the back of your neck. So I never do static stretching like this as a warm-up for a workout. What happens when you do that is your muscle gets loose and it doesn't have the same amount of elasticity and you won't be as strong. So before I do any resistance training, I never do static stretching. I do more foam rolling and dynamic movements to get myself warmed up. Stretching the lats is very important for being able to do an overhead press properly. So that's something I really focus on my upper body stretching. To do that, you'll put your arms on something and hinge at your hips back, and you should feel a stretch all along here. So to stretch the bicep, what I do is I put my arm up against the wall and I gently push forward to get my elbow into extension. So I'll straighten my arm out and I'll feel a stretch right along here. So when you're stretching, you don't want to force anything. You want to slowly lengthen the muscle. If you're trying to pull too hard, you're going to put yourself at risk for injury. And stretching is about doing the opposite. When you stretch, it's for reducing your risk of injury by making sure that your muscles can go through the full range of motion. When a muscle can't go through its full range of motion, that's when our body has imbalances, and that's when we're at risk for injury. So stretching is really important for preventing injury and making your body feel good so that you can optimize your performance. Time to stretch our legs. So to stretch the hamstrings, it's pretty simple. You just bend down. Unfortunately, it's not that simple because you have to be very careful about what you do with your back when you're stretching your hamstrings. You want to hinge at the hip. And by hinge at the hip, I mean bend at your hip without bending at your back. So my back stays still as I lengthen the back of my legs. This makes it so that I'm stretching my hamstrings and not my back. We want to stretch our back, but if our intention is to stretch the hamstrings, we don't want to be stretching our back because it's taking away from how well we stretch the hamstrings. So now I've bent my back down to stretch my back a little bit. But when you're in this position, you want to be very careful. We've all seen this stretch for your hamstrings, but it's very important to try to keep your back straight. For someone like me, I have very short and tight hamstrings, so it's very hard for me to get upright. So I do need to assist myself by pressing up on the ground so I can try to keep my back straight. So Alana's hamstrings are much more mobile, so she's a lot more comfortable in this stretch. So you can see that she can keep her back straight while she's sitting. So now we're going to go into some hip stretches, which will also stretch the hamstrings a little bit. So from here, I'm going to sink my hips back, but I'm not trying to round my back excessively. You can round your back a little bit, but it'll train your body's mechanics a bit better if you stay stiff in your back and only stretch in the hips. Now, as you get more comfortable with it, you can get down towards the floor, reach your hands forward more. Same idea, try to keep the back straight so that you can get a deeper stretch in your hip. Notice how I keep this back knee off the ground. Toe into the ground, knee up. You don't want to get lazy and do this. Stretching is an active process. You want to keep everything engaged. So if you have knee pain, putting your knee on the ground might not be the most comfortable thing. You could also stretch your glutes by crossing the legs over, bringing this knee up towards your chest a little bit. You don't need to pull too hard, just enough till you feel a stretch in your glute. So doing stretches on the ground, it's very important to think about your lower back position. You don't want your lower back to be all rounded out and have your butt come off the ground. You want to keep your tailbone in contact. There should be a small bit of space under your lower back while you do these stretches. Now we're trying to stretch the bottom of the ankle, whereas the other calf stretch was getting more of this top part. So you want to keep your heel in contact with the ground and push your knee over your toe. Your knee can go over your toe, especially in a squat, as long as your heel touches the ground. So it's very important that you stretch your ankles, but don't do it like this. So when you're doing the lunge, you want to squeeze your glute. It'll push your hip forward and you'll get a deeper stretch on the hip flexor. If you want a more deep stretch, you can put your arm up and lean back a little bit and you'll feel a little bit more in there as well. And if you really want to test your flexibility, you can try to grab, oh, it's a tough one, grab your ankle. While you're in that, you'll get the full quad stretch. If you have knee problems, you probably don't want to do this. To stretch your TFL, you're going to cross your leg over and push your hips 45 degrees out in front of you. You should feel a stretch right in your side, kind of towards the front. Now I'm going to show you some stretches for your torso. for your abdominals, your obliques, your quadratus lumborum, and even the erectors on your spine. So first we're just going to do a simple side bend. You want to keep your hips nice and locked, straight into position, and just bend at the side. You're trying to breathe nice and deep. You'll feel a nice stretch in there. I'm surprised I can do this.
Woo!
Oh, okay. Stretching isn't only important for the body, it's very important for your mind. When you stretch, it requires a little bit of focus, a little bit of balance, and it's kind of meditative. It'll kind of calm you down, it'll make you more mindful, and it's really going to decrease your stress. That makes it a really good thing to do on your rest days when you're not training, because it'll relax you and help you recover more quickly.